So take me back to your first session, and you don't have to like go into detail about what you talked about, but just more of like the overarching. So you went in and were you like, my wife suggested I get a Red Bull instead of a coffee and it sent me over the edge? Or how did it start? And like, how did she begin introducing the tools or the headphones and explain that process to you as you remember it?
I feel like it's the perfect blend of talk therapy and EMDR therapy because like the first part of the session is more of like talking about things, and then it's almost like she would get me to that state of being triggered,
Mm.
and then we would put the headphones on, and then she would ask me about, like, put yourself in this situation. Okay, now just close your eyes and see what comes up. And then I would just close my eyes, and whatever image would come up, I would bring it up. For example, I would say, like, I'm just sitting in a field by myself. And then she would ask, okay. Then we just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and until something would come up that would be like, let's talk about it. And then we
Mm.
would talk it through and make sense of it. So it was just a lot of like talking through it, but then also doing the whole left right brain activity to engage, because I feel like if you don't engage both sides, I mean, that's the whole point of it, is engaging both sides of your emotional body.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise you store it away and then just keep on trucking with life, and it never gets dealt with. And that it just basically, things would come up, we would talk through them, and then as it would progress through towards the end, nothing would come up. She would bring up triggering things that she knew all my buttons at the end. She would bring them up, and then it was like, I feel nothing. I'm not sparked by that.
So, do you think it's fair to say, just from your experience and like what you know about the therapy, again, not scientific or any type of expert on the actual therapy, maybe we can have someone come on and talk about it who is an expert,
Yeah.
but just as it pertains to your experience, that like she would talk to you and then notice that you were getting emotionally sensitive about something,
Mm.
as you mentioned, or heightened, and then give you the bilateral stimulation, because otherwise you remember it how you remember it, and then that's it, and there is no like exercising that other side of the brain that like brings a whole new vantage point. So
Mm-hmm.
you remember it how you remember it, you feel it how you feel it. That is what happens when you feel that triggering feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It takes you back to right here in this pocket where that's what I feel. And that bilateral stimulation allowed you to go into a space that you hadn't been, that would deepen the conversation, and that then allowed you to see it from a less in real time
Mm-hmm.
memory. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
A little bit. I mean, the feelings come up, the situations come up, whatever it was, just having the freedom and the space and the trust to bring up whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
and then have a professional there as a, almost like a spirit
Like a
guide,
guide,
a
yeah.
guide that is like, well, maybe it's this, or let's go deeper, and having someone kind of guide you through it. And for me, not to sound corny and hokey and all this, but for me, I was able to heal childhood traumas because it was like I had a guide there to kind of pull me through and help me, like, and sometimes that guide was me.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know my blanket statement on therapy, if I'm talking to friends or anybody about it, is like, it's really just giving yourself the space and time to deal with these things that you're always too busy to deal with
Mm-hmm.
you know
So is it fair to say that in your experience, you would experience this strong emotion from something that triggered you, and that it would stop there prior to this therapy, where just any therapy where a therapist or a counselor or a professional asks you further questions to deepen that's the same, right? The EMDR part was just
hmm
a different way of stimulating, but it was having a guide say, okay, well, that isn't like the end all be all of this situation. Let's go deeper and figure out like, what is it that formed
yeah,
that
go back to the
emotion
beginning. Oh
in
yeah,
the
for
first
sure.
place? Otherwise, we experience something and we're like, well, this is what I know, this is how I feel, and this is what I remember, and that is that. It isn't, well, I wonder what about that is making me feel that way. When have I felt that way before in my past? And maybe it has nothing to do with you. Maybe it has to do with being
Yeah,
teased in middle school. Like, who
yeah.
knows? But like having a guide there, not just the bilateral stimulation, but having someone there that combination of saying, okay, well, let's talk about that further to really get to the deep rooted situation.
Yeah, because just because you think something, just because you believe something, does not mean it's real.
Mm-hmm.
It does not mean it really happened. It doesn't mean that it's factual. Just because I mean, we see that in all the nonsense of the world these days. Like,
Yeah.
just because you believe it and you think it's real, it's not. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the facts.
Yeah.
And so you would feel these things that you thought were so real, and but it's like it's not. It's just it's what you've made up as a protective mechanism or whatever.
Can you tell me more about what you meant by like sometimes that guide was you?
Well, I mean, just sometimes it's just you have to be the one that helps your younger you through a problem,
Yeah. I've seen that. I've kind of experienced that like myself, or like seen other things that suggest, go back and write a letter to your younger self about like how it's all going to be okay and how you're sorry for the things
Yeah,
that had happened to you.
yeah,
So kind of like that.
yeah. She would say quite a bit, like, "What's little Greg doing? Can you talk to little Greg? Can you help
Mm-hmm.
little?" And it's just powerful because you're like closing your eyes, envisioning your little kid
Mm-hmm.
version of yourself that's maybe being bullied or whatever the trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and you now as the adult can be like, it's gonna be okay. We're good.
Give little Greg a hug or
Yeah,
say, yeah.
exactly. And again, it's just having the space and having someone there to help you through it. And honestly, if I wouldn't have done that last summer, I would still be living in that state. I'd still be triggered by things. So to me, it was just such a powerful thing to do, and I'm so grateful that I did it. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful that someone recommended it,
Mm-hmm.
gave me permission to look
Mm-hmm.
into it, and that's the whole point of this is like permission. You can do this too,
Yes.
and you're free. You'll be free from whatever the trauma that you have.
Yes. As your wife, business partner, causer of some of your trauma and stress and problems and agitation, I definitely notice a major difference in the way that you respond to things versus react, or in the amount of time it takes you to kind of process through something that does bother you. It doesn't make things go away. It doesn't make uncomfortable, triggering feelings that make you angry or resentful or whatever the negative emotion is. It doesn't make them go away. It's just now you have learned to kind of like isolate them for what they are and know how to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to ask about Barry. So
Oh, yeah, great.
as part of like meditating, we have learned that sometimes it's easier to give a name to the voices inside of our head, right? We all have those voices inside of our head that go nuts, and worst case scenario, and just constant chatter and telling you all the things you should be and should do and shouldn't do. And everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? Just your brain that never is quiet. That's the point of meditation, is to quiet down those voices. And through that process, we've learned that by giving those voices a name, Sharon Salzberg calls hers Lucy, I call mine China. We've talked about this before. Like, China is the bully that lives in my head that tells
China.
me, because it was an old
China.
stop. Not because of that, but because of this big, muscular female wrestler from when I was teased in middle school for being muscular. This is not about me, but that giving a name to the voices that pop up is powerful, because then you can kind of see it outside of yourself and disassociate with whatever that voice is telling you, that it isn't actually you. It isn't actually what's happening.
Yeah.
And so tell me about Barry.
Well, so me in a normal state is laid back, chill, easy going. That's when I'm normal, right?
Yeah.
But when I get triggered, I become a kind of a caveman. And do you remember that cartoon, like Bugs Bunny cartoon guy? He had the club. He's like, "Roar," and he would like run
He
through
had
the
like a
cave.
leopard skirt
Yeah,
thing or whatever,
that was my guy.
loincloth.
And his name was Barry, and he was just like a caveman. Because Greg's hurt, I gotta step up and protect. So I'm this 4 foot tall,
Wily ass
wily ass
caveman.
caveman guy. So that was my protective mechanism. So through my process of going through the therapy was learning to be able to talk to him and be like, it's all gonna be okay. I'm safe.
So when
This isn't
Barry
gonna
would
hurt
jump
me.
in to
Yeah.
protect you because you felt hurt,
Yeah.
he would come in with his club like nobody's going to hurt Greg.
Yeah.
Rawr.
Yeah.
And you had to learn how to say, that's Barry coming in to protect me, and how to say to Barry, hey, buddy, I got this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and you probably notice that when we do have arguments,
Mm-hmm.
because we're real people and
Yeah,
you
right.
have disagreements. In the past, instead of me getting like dirty and like low blow and like, just like really letting you have it about everything but the thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I got to throw everything at you here to win the battle.
That was Barry.
That was Barry.
Yeah.
That was Barry. And Barry was raging after the
Yeah.
Red Bull and coffee incident in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
He was like, this is bullshit. And we're not going to deal with this anymore. This disrespect.
Yeah.
And wouldn't let it go for days. And then Barry don't come around much anymore, so.
Yeah.
And you have to see that,
No, I
you
do. And I
experience
think
it.
it's so powerful, both through giving a name to the voices like we learned
Yeah.
in meditation, and then giving a name and a persona to essentially what is your ego, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the part of your ego that's like,
Gets charged up
yeah.
and
Yeah.
protective.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't want to sound again crazy, hokey, whatever, but after doing it, if we're thinking about therapy and all these things and the residual effect of it, I would just say it feels a lot quieter. I
Mm-hmm.
feel a lot more at peace and a lot more quiet. Like there's just a lot more knowing that you're okay, that things are okay. If you think about the state of the world and all the things like the news media, they know that like they want us to be in this constant state of like frazzled,
Mm-hmm.
on edgeness that like I just don't feel that way
Yeah, so it's helped you in other areas
when
of
I'm
your
not.
life too,
Yeah,
right? Because the fear mongering that
the fear
happens in the
mongering.
world,
Yeah.
you now are able to kind of like disassociate from
Yes.
that, knowing that like some of that may be valid, some of it may not. And instead of letting my ego jump in to protect me and
Feel like
reactivity to being scared,
yeah.
I'm like way more in control. I mean, I noticed that about you. I noticed that that has like a ripple effect into every area of your life, and also an influence on like me and in every area of our life. We're like, we have an 18-year-old daughter. She and I are the same person. So naturally, mother, daughter, teenager, you have conflict. And when we have conflict, we do this because neither of us are backing down. And I am the adult, and I should, trying to get rid of what I should and shouldn't be doing, but I should be able to have more control over my emotional reactivity, right?
Mm.
I've learned the tools, I have the experience more so than her. Like it's normal for a teenager to maybe be a little bit more out of control than like mom should, right? But you going through what you've gone through and learning the tools that you have and learning how to process through your own emotions and your own Barry, when you see my Barry come out, whatever my Barry's called,
Yeah.
You're able to help me.
Yeah.
Like you intervene and say like, hey, hold on a second. And that's been helpful because I respect you in that way, knowing that you have done that work on your own and that what you're saying to me is valid.
Yes. And you become aware of it in other people too. Some people that are always ready for battle. You know what I mean? It's like you don't have to yell at the person in the McDonald's drive-through. It's nothing personal. They just forgot the tartar sauce on your fish sandwich, which amazing story. We were in the freaking McDonald's drive-through and all of a sudden this lady throws her car in reverse. We were the next ones in line and she was pulling, throws her car in reverse, almost like crushes into us, kind of goes beside us, gets out of the car, walks up to the drive-through window, and she's like,
barefoot.
yeah. And is like, I need to get tartar sauce for my fish sandwich. I'm not waiting until I get home to eat it. And I was like, what the hell? This is happening. This is an adult.
Yeah, and like what was it that made her feel so reactive to
her
that?
Barry.
Yeah, like just
she had been disrespected at work. Maybe her kids mouthed off to her. Maybe there was some, other trauma, and she was in the freaking red zone.
Or
and the
deeper
tartar
than
sauce just sent her over the edge.
Deeper than that, though, like it could be so much deeper than that.
Who knows?
Forgetting the tartar sauce made her feel this feeling of like always being overlooked, or like,
Yeah.
the whole point is to go as deep as possible. And even when it doesn't seem like it's related, that tartar sauce would set her over the edge, it could be something that lives so deeply inside of her by being overlooked and forgotten and
Yeah.
abandoned, that
Oh,
someone forgetting the tartar sauce.
how could they?
Yeah. And it's not from a place of judgment. I mean, that story was funny because it was like, I can't
Yeah.
believe this is happening. But
Yeah.
just, you never know the inner turmoil and the inner trauma that people are dealing with and why they're experiencing it in the first place. And so, if we would all, or could all, have an experience of having someone guide us through,
Yeah.
we would all be so much
What?
more at peace. We aren't taught how to deal with our emotions in this way, or how to explore our emotions in this way. Sometimes because we're men and we're supposed to be macho and not deal with these things, for whatever reason, we aren't. And so if we had more
Well, I know the
access.
reason. It's a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
It's admitting that I don't know how to deal with life
Yeah.
on my own.
Yeah.
So that automatically makes me feel like less of a man.
Yeah.
But again, if you just equate it to, if you don't lift weights, you don't work out, you're not going to be physically fit. So
Yeah.
you have to go lift heavy things, you have to go run, you have to eat good food, or you're going to feel like shit. Life's going to life. So you got to understand how to deal with your emotional self too, or just you get stuck. So it's just the work, it's the maintenance of being a human being. If you want to experience life in its fullest range of happiness and not live in a state of red zone,
Yeah.
I think it's super important to deal with stuff. And then also be aware that the people around you, just assume that they're not in a good space,
Mm-hmm.
and be more compassionate with people. Like, why is this person so crazy and on edge? Just understand that it might be a hurt 12-year-old, even though they're 50.
That's right. That's right.
The tartar sauce just sends them over the edge.
Well, I'm so happy that you completed this type of therapy. I notice a major difference in who you are and how you show up for yourself and for the people around you, including, and most probably importantly, me and our kids, but also your business, your friends, your relationship to yourself. And thank you for being brave and sharing your experience with it with our listeners, in an effort to encourage people to seek that out on their own.
And I would also add to that, I haven't really completed it. I've started that journey, and a chapter has been closed, but I'm definitely open to going back. And it's just part of the process of living. It might not be EMDR, it might just be talk therapy, but
Mm-hmm.
always just knowing that you can always talk to someone.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You're not alone. We're like 99.9999% the same, but we're all so different in our experiences and our traumas and our upbringings and our whatever petri dish you were grown in.
Yeah.
We're all just so different with those things. So that's what makes us so unique in our stories. And we are just knowing that humans are very emotional. We make decisions emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
and just know that you're dealing with highly emotional creatures every day when you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with people. So
That's right. Everyone's details are different, but
and that
everyone's going through something, or has gone through something that has
yeah,
formed and framed.
and that includes the way you talk to yourself,
Yeah.
because all day long we're talking to ourselves, whether we
And when
admit
China
in
comes in,
yeah. And now you can tell China, have a seat, I got this. When Barry's ready to go to war, we're good, bro.
put your club down.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. One last thing. Is it fair to say that now when something triggering comes up, you're able to not just tell Barry to put his club down, but you're able to go, hey, this isn't happening right now. This feeling that I have is isolated to what's happening in this moment. But when you start to go down that dark path, you're able to quickly discern that, like, hey, those things are not actually relevant to this situation anymore. Because I feel like that's the goal of
Yeah,
EMDR therapy, is to make sure that you stay in the moment, in the issue that you're dealing with, and not let that past experience cloud what's
yeah.
happening in the moment. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say just my practice is to live each day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a year or a decade. It's like just focus on each day, and like at the end of each day, be grateful. And then when you wake up, just do your best and know that, like, I might have to deal with some trauma today. Knowing that your side of the street's clean, that you're in a good headspace, you're taking care of the things that you can control. And then when someone does act out of pocket, or someone is pissed off because they're tartar sauce or whatever, if you're shooting daggers through your eyes at me, I can easily look at you and be like, I wonder what's wrong with her. Like, I wonder why she's,
What they're going through.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a lot more clarity and less feeling attacked.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah.
So there's like this armor that you have of like some people are walking around agitating people. Like, I'm not trying to agitate you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do the unless I am. But like, you're operating out of good intentions, and you're just like, I'm trying to kick ass and do the best, be the best dad I can be the best husband, take care of myself the best I can, right? Doing all the right things. And then if something is like a little heat and hot, like whatever, you're just able to look at it with a little bit more clarity, and it's not personal. Like,
Yeah.
I know this has nothing to do with me.
Being able to see it for what it is
Right.
versus an emotional overlay.
Trying not to be emotional about everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. EMDR therapy is obviously a form of therapy, talk therapy. We're big advocates of that. And meditation, as I mentioned. Anything else that you would suggest to someone who might reach out to you and say, hey, I'm going through this shit. I can't go to therapy, or I've tried meditating. What would you say to them as an alternative or as encouragement? Because we've heard that before, and
Yeah.
it's important to provide other alternatives if you have any suggestions from your experience.
I feel like hope and belief are the big things that people need to have. So like, having someone to talk to, even if they're not a therapist, but just someone that will listen to you, and that's such a relief to be able to just kind of like connect and talk to people. And as men, we don't, it's not just normal for us to sit around and unload our drama, but like having a friend that you can talk to, and
A sounding board, like
yeah.
someone who's going to look objectively with you and just listen.
The worst thing is sitting and ruminating in your own thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
being stuck and feeling hopeless and feeling like I can't get out of this thing, taking action, and feeling like I got this, even if it's just 1% better every day, or
Mm-hmm.
baby steps or whatever you want to do, but like talking about it. And then you realize, like, oh shit, it's not just me. You're messed up too. We're all messed up. We're all just hurt little kids trying to do the best we can, and don't keep it bottled up, because you tell yourself stories and lie to yourself, and it makes it worse.
To
I feel
be
like,
isolated and
yeah,
keep to yourself. Yeah. Like another thing that I thought of is that there are organizations and free resources that are available, and there are podcasts and there are different things, but that's all subject to where you're getting your information, and then also it's just more consumption versus getting it out, like you mentioned, which I think is a great recommendation of being able to connect with someone. And to that point, if there isn't someone that you know or trust to talk to, there are actual organizations and resources and phone numbers and chats that you can get on to talk to someone. You are never alone. And trained professionals that are free resources if paying to go see a therapist isn't an option for you. So you have permission to do that. It isn't weak. There's nothing wrong with you. It is the best thing that you could do for yourself and for the people around you that you love. So thank you
absolutely.
again. I feel like that was very brave and very open and very important to have conversations like that, specifically, again, not to stereotype, but specifically as a man.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Welcome.
You can find previous episodes where we've had conversations about things like this. You can find all of this information on my website, cameoelisebraun.com. You can sign up for my weekly reset newsletter, where I kind of share what I'm going through from time to time on a weekly basis, and the steps that I'm taking to get through them in a way that's kind of therapeutic for me to share, but also helpful to provide an extra perspective to the readers and the community there. So many ways to connect with us as well. And we appreciate that you're here, and thank you for listening.
Until next time.